seems to be something deeper than that, but I'll tell you about it. Their email just came out at 1:30. I just read it just now. Oh, I have not. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Sylvia Arenas. I'm your county supervisor for District 1 and also your chair. We are joined here by my co-chair. And we are going to start off by taking roll call so we can determine whether we have quorum or not.
All right, Vice Chairperson Yung
I am here.
and Chairperson Arenas.
I'm also here.
Thank you. You have a quorum.
Wonderful. So next, what we will do is ask for, I'm sorry. Oh, yes. We are going to ask for public comment. This is public comment on items that are not on our agenda, but that are under the purview of the committee. So this is folks who want to speak about, like I said, any matter that is not on the agenda. If you haven't grabbed an agenda, please grab it now and make sure that your item is not on for discussion. If you're waiting to speak on the item relating to the Child Welfare Corrective Action Plan and related reform efforts, that's item number 4. Please fill out a yellow card, or if you're online, raise your hand when we get to that item. If you are here to talk about the bi-monthly verbal report from the Office of Children and Families and Policy, you can go ahead and, and this is on the Youth Services Master Plan. You can wait for item 5. And then we also have item 6, which is a report of the county executive relating to the fiscal year, which is item 6. So those are the items on our agenda today. If you have something that you would like to share that's not on our agenda, I would ask for you to turn that yellow card in today or raise your virtual hand. So I will ask our clerk to see if we have any cards for public comment.
We currently have 3 requests to speak, all online.
All online?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Okay, so we will go ahead and do 2 minutes.
2 minutes? All right. So we'll go ahead and call our speakers. Our first speaker is Parent. Parent, you'll have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will begin when you begin speaking.
Yes, hello, good afternoon. I've spoken to you guys a bunch of times about my kids who are being sexually molested and I can't get a screening for them. There's even been death threats against them by my former attorney who wants the sexual abuse to continue, and she's said if I keep trying to get a screening for them that she's going to harm them. My son, he's already confirmed that my ex-wife was letting somebody rape him beginning when he was 13. There've been unnecessary bathing with the children, and then there was also sexual contact between 2 of the children. And for some reason, I can't get a screening because my former attorney, she's well connected, and Wendy Kinnear-Rausch and Daniel Little, they know about the sexual abuse and the death threats. I've sent them the messages, but nobody cares. Nobody will do anything. Is it really a wonder that baby Jackson was being raped and then he was murdered? When these people are right here listening, and they won't do anything for my children. Shame on them. They're not good people to allow this to happen to my children. And now we're wondering why all these kids are dying. 3 kids already. In addition to baby Jackson, we had baby Phoenix, and we had Jordan Walker, and we had 3 other in the 2 years prior. I mean, it's just terrible what's going on in this county, that we're letting these people sit in their positions and be so callous towards other people's children. And we really should consider replacing these people, because we're just going to have more children dying and more children being raped. And it's completely unacceptable that we should have this kind of conduct, this misconduct in our county from our people, from the people who are supposed to be protecting our children. Thank you so much for your time.
Our next speaker is Rose. Rose, you'll have 2 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. My name is Rose Klein. I'm the senior manager with ACCI's Asian Women's Home. I oversee our anti-domestic violence and human trafficking program. I want to thank you for your continued partnership and acknowledge the difficulty of your unenviable task of determining the budget at this time. We have heard that we may be facing a 19% reduction in county funding. To illustrate what that would look like for ACCI, 19% would be the equivalent of all shelter staff and operations funded by the county, including both family advocates, and 2/3 of the cost of all shelter operations, which include food, utilities, janitorial, maintenance, repairs, and pest control at the shelter. Without electricity or water for 8 months out of the year, and no case managers to provide support or groceries, it would be the equivalent of losing 10 emergency shelter beds in Santa Clara County. I hope that any cuts to our essential, life-saving, gender-based violence services can be as minimal as possible. Thank you so much for your time.
Our next speaker is Melissa Luke. Melissa, we are unmuting you. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Melissa Luke, and I work for YWCA Golden Gate Silicon Valley. Thank you to Supervisor Arenas and Supervisor Young for your continuing support of survivors, and in particular, the county's $2.7 million annual investment in one-time funds for rape crisis center services. Every year, YWCA works with over 2,500 survivors of sexual assault, of which 37% are children and youth. We are doing our best to meet current demand, but we are at capacity. Families seeking bilingual services are waiting up to 2 months. For a child survivor, that wait isn't a mere inconvenience. It can mean the difference between crisis and recovery. Children whose abuse goes unaddressed face significantly higher risks of depression and PTSD, and are 10 to 13 times more likely to attempt suicide. Proposed budget cuts would make this worse. Every reduction means more children waiting longer, more families without support, and more trauma left unaddressed with lifelong and intergenerational impacts. I am here today to respectfully request your collaboration and transparency around these sexual assault funds. As CBOs who don't understand the intricacies of county budgets, it has been horrifying to consider that in a short 2.5 months, one-time county funds may be impacted or even eliminated. 2/3 of YWCA's sexual assault services are funded by Santa Clara County. Your funds have been critical to sustaining current levels of life-saving services, and funding reductions will destabilize our already stretched safety net. As you consider your investment and the safety of our most vulnerable survivors, we would respectfully request that rather than setting funding levels for each category of service, potentially lowering levels to the points where we would be unable to perform that scope, we look at all scopes together so CBOs can strategically blend and bring county funding with state, city, and private sources to best meet need. Thank you so much for your consideration and partnership.
Our next speaker is Perla Flores. Perla, please go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Perla Flores. I oversee domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking programs for Community Solutions. Also speaking today on behalf of DVAC. and want to start off by expressing our deep appreciation for the bold leadership and support that particularly Supervisor Arenas and Young have extended for survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, and really to express how these services are life-saving. They provide safety, security, and hope for survivors. We look forward to reviewing the proposed budget and working collaboratively with the county to ensure that these essential services are preserved and strengthened, especially now as we prepare for major events like the World Cup, and in the context of heightened anti-immigration climate. The need for accessible, trauma-informed, and culturally responsive services are even more urgent. We're grateful again for the partnership, and we remain committed to working alongside you to ensure continuity of care and protection for our most vulnerable community members. Thank you.
And I'll move into our in-person speakers. Our first speaker is Jennifer Celicia. Celaya, thank you. Please go ahead and move to the middle, to the center aisle. Thank you.
Hello, Board. I just want to say that this opportunity for reform, it's sad that it came at the hands of a baby's death again. It's only been a few years since the death of baby Phoenix, and now we're here with baby Jackson. And it's very discouraging because you have community leaders here in the room, and such as myself, providing services for years, decades, without a penny. We've provided proposals and we have advocated for these families so that we could prevent tragedies like this. So I feel like this is an opportunity, if we're going to talk about transparency and reform, that we really start looking at our community leaders to assist us in that, because we're boots on the ground. We know what families are going through. We know what they need. And it's just being overlooked. And again, it's a tragedy. Nobody knows what that feels like unless you've had a kid removed from your care, if you've grew up in foster care, or if you're grieving a death of a child. And most of you guys can say you feel that. I disagree, because I don't think any of you guys have had that. I don't think you guys grew up in foster care. I don't think you grieved the death of a child that was raped. I don't think you've had to go through any of those tragedies. So I hope that you guys would take this opportunity to really partner with those that have the best interest for the department, for families out there, to prevent tragedies like this. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Teresa Talamonte. Please come up. Thank you.
Blessings, blessings, blessings. So I'm here because, I have a family member, which is my daughter, that's actually I've been having to get help for. She has a 3-year-old son. I'm raising her 11-year-old daughter, and I've raised her all her life. Long story short, this child has been abused severely, severely. I've had pictures, doctors, everything have sent it. Asked the worker one day, what are you guys going to do about this? Oh, well, the child seems happy. I said, she said, what do you think we should do? I go, you are asking me what you think you should do. You are the social worker. I go, but if you really want to know what you need to do, you need to tear the whole system down and rebuild it again. I go, plain and simple, it's done. Accountability needs to be taken. Where there is a root, there is fruit, where it's either bad or good. So if this fruit is bad, then you need to cut that whole tree down and plant something good, because these children are the ones that are taking the abuse. I advocated for many years in different departments and seeing all these children being abused, and even myself sometimes being in the system by calling on myself. I have family members that drugged this poor baby, but nobody wants to hear because nobody wants to take accountability, so they push it aside. So I'm here to say, you know what? I'm fighting for the children. I'm a children's minister. I see these all the time. These kids need our voices. So please, I'm asking, I'm begging, take care of our babies that God has blessed us with. These are babies that have been blessed to us. And what are we doing? Throwing them on the side of the road for anybody and all to abuse them, from sex to abuse to being drugged? So I'm just asking, please keep those accountable. Help our babies. They need it. Thank you.
And that concludes public comment.
Thank you. And if, before you leave the chambers, I'd love for you to speak with my staff member who is back there, We'd love to support you. Thank you. So returning back to the process, I just want to make sure I read something. And because California law prohibits the disclosure of information related to an investigation of suspected child abuse or neglect, we're not authorized by law to speak to the specifics of any particular case, no matter how horrendous the allegations are. The California law also requires child welfare departments to immediately cross-report physical and sexual abuse of children to law enforcement and district attorneys so that swift action can be taken. We take all allegations of child abuse seriously, and of course, we do rapid and cross-agency responses. The reporting line for Child Abuse Neglect Center is 833-722-5437. All right, I am going to go ahead and move forward into our, I think we have consent. We have one item on consent, which is meeting minutes, and hopefully my co-chair would give me a motion for that.
I have no changes to the consent or the agenda, so I'll make a motion to approve the consent and agenda as is.
Wonderful, and I'm going to second that.
And we have no requests to speak, so I'll go ahead and call the roll. Vice Chairperson Yung
Yes.
and Chairperson Arenas.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move into our regular agenda. The first item is receive monthly report from the Department of Family and Children's Services relating to the Child Welfare Corrective Action Plan and related reform efforts. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairperson Arenas and Vice Chair Yung. I'm going to go ahead and make a quick opening statement and then turn it over to Wendy for the CAP update, because I think they're connected. The death of Jackson Juarez is deeply tragic. My heart aches for the small child and his family. No child should ever be subjected to this kind of treatment. We are conducting a thorough review of policies, protocols, and staff actions, including every interaction involving Jackson during his time in foster care. We are committed to continuing to partner with the California Department of Social Services and all other related investigations as appropriate. We began our investigation immediately and are moving it forward as quickly as possible and are working to understand exactly what happened and to make any and all necessary changes that can better protect vulnerable children in our community. The county's report will be made available in accordance with the legal timeline, including review and redaction pursuant to state law. There is nothing more important to the county of Santa Clara than keeping kids safe. I'll turn over to Wendy to give her update, which connects into that.
Good afternoon, Supervisor Arenas and Supervisor Young, and members of the board and public. So in light of the devastating death of Jackson, the CAP updates that I had originally planned to provide today, it was not where we needed to focus. It was not what needed to happen. I am absolutely heartbroken, devastated over the loss of this little 2-year-old boy, and my condolences to the family and to the community that's grieving. There's nothing more important than keeping children safe and supporting this active investigation for the county to determine how and why this horrific tragedy occurred, and to make sure it never happens again. It's the job of child welfare to make sure kids are safe. I do want to make sure there's some important updates to this committee, though. I would like this committee to know that we met with the California Department of Social Services this week when they came on site for our regular monthly meeting. They have agreed to fully and swiftly review Jackson's entire case file and all the interactions that the department had with this family, and to provide Department of Family and Children's Services with its case review and all of that direction. I've been in active communication with them since shortly after Jackson was hospitalized. CDSS will extend the DFCS cap. We are in full agreement, but the specifics of that extension will be finalized only after we have that full review of Jackson's case and all of the details of that extension, all of the dates, everything unknown. But I can tell you that the two things we have agreed on that we will focus will be our emergency placement approval process and our resource family approval process. CDSS is fully committed to this process in partnership with DFCS and the Board of Supervisors. I will also note that we did include In this report are regular matrix, all of the updates for full transparency, so that we make sure you have everything that occurred from our last meeting up until this meeting. I will also reflect that by our next meeting, I will have any and all updates from CDSS with regards to extensions of the cap. In closing, I want to say that there is nothing more important to DFCS than keeping children safe, and I am fully committed to each of the active investigations by the county, by the state, to ensure a thorough review of our policies, our protocols, our practices, all of our staff's interactions at every level, to ensure that Jackson's time in foster care and the transparency to understand what happened and to make sure any and all changes to protect vulnerable children occur. As James said, I want to reassure this committee that we'll have urgency to all of this. My heart absolutely aches for the loss of Jackson. Again, my condolences to his family, and my full commitment as a parent, as a member of this community, as the Director of Department of Family and Children's Services, will do anything and everything for next steps that we need to take. And with that, Supervisor Arenas and Supervisor Young, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. And before we move on, I'm actually going to look at Michaela just to help guide us with our conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just want to give a little bit of context for the confidentiality for child welfare. Child welfare is subject to one of the strictest privacy frameworks under Welfare and Institutions Code 827, but that privacy protection is not absolute. And in the instances of tragic fatality, it actually moves towards transparency and disclosures through record productions. DFCS is currently working on producing those records. They are required to reduce identifiers in the records and also coordinate with the Office of the District Attorney to redact anything that they determine in their independent judgment would jeopardize their investigation. So those records are coming. We can't go in front of that discussion that needs to happen with the district attorney, but it is important for this committee and the public to know that they will be produced.
Thank you. Thank you for helping guide us in that conversation. I'm going to ask my co-chair if she has any comments.
Thank you, Chair. I see our county executive's light on, so I'm going to, James, why don't you go ahead and lean into this, and I'll continue.
Actually, I'm so sorry. Process first, public comment. I'm
Public
going to
comment.
check in with our audience and see if there's any input from our public. If you're
Currently-
interested in speaking on this item, this is the time to do it. You have to submit that yellow card, or if you're at home, please raise your virtual hand.
We are currently holding at 4 requests to speak.
Okay, we'll go ahead and do 2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay. I'll go ahead and start with the cards here in chambers. I'll go ahead and call your names. Please just form a line at the center aisle. Vanessa Ashford, Javier Salazar, and Steve Barron.
Good afternoon. As a parent, as a mother, as a community worker who engages with families who have deep and generational involvement with the Department of Children and Family Services, I want to share that what we've been asking for years is the same thing. We ask for resources and investment in our families, in our communities, that we stop siloing and separating departments and processes. Right now, many families have 5 or 6 social workers, from beginning of report to placement or case plan, not giving any time to form a relationship or allowing a social worker to determine a baseline of behavior. When I spoke with fathers in preparation of this meeting, they were dumbfounded that social workers do not take the time face-to-face to understand behaviors. Is this how someone traditionally acts? Are they under stress? Are they triggered? They were even more concerned to understand that that social worker who might be in front of that child or that parent does not ultimately make the decision on whether the child is safe or not. That they go back and use some software and then it goes to a manager and then it goes to a director, and ultimately they don't understand. Our community doesn't understand why we're not making decisions as human beings in that moment with that family and connecting them with what they really need to be stable and independent of the system. We have so many social workers and they spend so much time in trainings that they never get to use face-to-face with our community. So what we ask, what the community of Gilroy, who is historically under-resourced and underfunded, asks, is that we stop asking for the same thing and we see immediate, meaningful change in funding and policy. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Javier Salazar. I'm a father to a 3-year-old little girl. I'm part of the community, and I just happen to be here on this day, and I've been dealing with a horrific case involving my daughter and failure of these 3 agencies, which is DCFS, Santa Clara County District Attorney, and Santa Clara County Family Court. I believe those 3 entities are tied in, and I have suffered extreme, horrible, cruel, and unusual punishment to any human being. My daughter was taken from my custody when I advocated for her. DCFS reports are inaccurate, misspelled, formulated really, really bad. I would say like a 3rd grader could probably do a better job. I need help. I've been exhausted. All my avenues of navigating the system, and it's very disconnected. I'm begging for an independent investigation on my family court case and my DCFS case. I have tried everything, filed complaints, and they go nowhere. It's stonewalled. Where does devastated father go to when CPS, family court, and my law enforcement doesn't help? So my daughter has suffered abuse, emotional abuse, oral infections. Mother was having sex in front of the child. Things that are blatantly out there. And I have all the evidence. This is like half of my case in 2 years, my family court case, and it's all there. I don't understand why my agencies are not doing anything, and I'm living testimony. It's still going on right now. I'm begging for someone to do something. I've been in contact with city council, the DA, and it's like there's no help. There's no lobby for people that are going through this until something tragic happens. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name's Steve Barron, a member of various committees and agencies working on issues related to children. I'm speaking for none of them. I'm speaking for myself. Firstly, there should be no other priority other than child safety as the first and foremost consideration at every stage of the child protection process, from the time a call comes into the CAN Center, where too many cases are still being evaluated out 20 years after that issue was first formally noticed and documented, and most recently in November by the state, through the investigation process where more collateral information needs to be gathered, as included in one of the recommendations of the most recent Child Death Review Team report, which recommendations I hope the Board of Supervisors will adopt and ensure are implemented to the realization of the limitations of strictly voluntary services as documented in the most recent voluntary services analysis provided by DFCS at your direction, to a thorough assessment of any potential placement for children, with the first consideration being safety and the ability of the caretakers to meet the child's various needs. Many of these concerns with regard to child safety in the DFCS process were brought to management's attention over decades and respectfully listened to, glad-handed, and nothing was done. In 2020, at the direction of the newly appointed DFCS director at that time, racial and social justice was clarified as being the agency's new priority, and diversion of children from the child protection system, resulting in a process that clearly, as confirmed by the state, endangered the very children it claimed to protect, contributed to the death of Phoenix Castro and possibly others. The current DFCS director, however, has made significant concrete progress, improving the focus on child safety, but as mentioned many times before, a lot of work still needs to be done because of the damage done and aggravated in 2020. Child safety should be the first and foremost priority at every stage of the child protection process before all other considerations. Our county is not the only one who's having these problems. We're just more transparent. So thank you for your openness.
Thank you, and we'll move to our online speaker. Our online speaker is Parent. We are unmuting you. Please go ahead.
Yes, I heard the statements from Daniel Little and Wendy Canary-Roush, and I believe that is just lip service. I mean, how many meetings have I been to and described the molestation of my children, the death threats, and all that stuff, and they just sat there and they didn't do anything. I mean, the only response that I got from Wendy Canary-Roush, I emailed her lots of times. The only response was, if you want to file a complaint, you can file a complaint. I mean, that is just so cold-blooded. I mean, she didn't say, I'm worried about your kids. That's terrible. What's happening? Let me see what I can do. I mean, she didn't say anything like that. And I've called the CANC hotline. I've emailed her. I've emailed the DA. I've emailed Supervisor Arenas. I mean, there's nobody I haven't emailed. And I mean, nothing's being done. I mean, you heard the previous commenter from Family Court say that, nobody's doing anything. You just get stonewalled. I mean, that's what's happening to me too. And that's what's happening to a lot of other parents that I've spoken to. I mean, nobody seems to care. And I think that's what happened in this tragedy with baby Jackson, that it just carries over, this uncaring, anything goes kind of thing. I mean, I look at his picture. My youngest son, when he was first being molested, he was the same age, 2 years old. I mean, it's just so sad, so distressing, so terrible. And these people just, they don't care. Daniel Little and Wendy Canary-Roush, they don't care. And I think that if you really want to change the protection of children, you have to remove these two people. You can't keep paying them as children are dying and being raped. It just doesn't work. Thank you so much for your time.
That concludes public comment.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and resume. We were with James.
Thank you, Chairperson. Members of the committee, I just wanted to say a couple things. First, I won't repeat the comments that I made a little while ago at the press conference that was hosted by Supervisor Arenas, but I did share, as I think several people in the audience here know, some updates and significant words, including my own perspective on the tragic and horrific death of Jackson. I also wanted to just note for the committee that I did share with the board, and it's publicly available, a brief memorandum that, consistent with the advice from County Council regarding our confidentiality rules that apply to the numerous things that are under active investigation, outlines the steps that the department and the county organization has already taken to investigate what has happened, and our commitment to continuous disclosure to the extent we can under the applicable state laws, but continuous and ongoing disclosure regarding what we're learning, to take actions based on what we learned from these investigations, and to do so swiftly. And finally, as has already been highlighted by the supervisor and by county staff, our continued appreciation to CDSS. They are the regulatory entity responsible for supervision of California's 58 child welfare agencies. As one of the public commenters noted, these are challenges that are faced across California. Their expertise, their direction, their regulation, and their authority is necessary here with the extension of the cap, but also their on-site presence to do not just a full review related to Jackson, but also other matters, all other matters that they believe it's appropriate to review related to the practices, policies, and specific interactions and actions taken or not taken by staff within DFCS. That's our commitment, but did want to highlight that we are committed to as much transparency as we can around this, including disclosure of the file, as was explained by County Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Co-Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I think it goes without saying that this has been an exceptionally hard and difficult time for so many of us at the county and for so many in the community. This is a horrific tragedy that never should have happened. And I want to address, I want to share that sentiment today. It's important for me, for our residents, our neighbors, our community leaders, our advocates, and our partners in this work to understand that this is not a light matter. This is not taken lightly. This weighs heavily in all of us, in every conversation in the hallways of this building, and in every single conversation in the district. Whether you work in child welfare or not, this is weighing heavily on everybody. It's almost breaking to the spirit of this county, because so many of us show up to work every single day to prevent exactly this, to hope that this never happens, to hope that children have an opportunity to survive, not just survive, but to thrive in our county. I was raised by this county. I was born at the county hospital. We relied on every county service. I haven't shared this before. I don't share this often because the backstory is not as exciting as you might think. I've been a client of probation. I've been in the juvenile justice system. Members of my family have entered foster care. Members of my family have been adopted away from our family. My siblings and I have been in the DFCS system. We have met good social workers, and we have met bad social workers. We've met good people at the county, and we've met bad people at the county. Bad services, which is why I've committed my life and my career to this county organization, and why I see my family and every single client that comes through our doors, that walks through our hallways, and calls our office. We have to honor Jackson and Phoenix and every single child that has not had the best outcome in our county organization and all government entities. Any child that has engaged with the system and has not left us better. The only way we can honor them now and do right by them is to improve and make better this system. And part of this conversation, we're going to be trying to survive a crisis. We're going to survive a crisis, but the North Star is to prevent this crisis from ever happening again. We need to acknowledge that there are system failures beyond this tragedy, beyond engagement with DFCS. There is a culmination of racist policies and practices that we live with every single day, not created necessarily by the people in this room, but created by the systems of power and structure that has defined this country from the very beginning. And what we see today in our communities is a direct result of generations of abuse, of neglect, of violence, of harm. Practices and policies that have made families, indigenous families, brown families, black families, poor families, immigrant families, vulnerable to harm, violence, addiction, and system engagement. The answer or solution will require systems to acknowledge and address these issues at the root. Before a child is ever in the care of DFCS, their family is already struggling. Perhaps it's been struggling over generations as a result of concentrated poverty that impacts people of color at disproportionate levels. Yes, we have to wait for a thorough investigation. It is going to be critical for us to attain the accountability that we so desperately want and must have. We need accountability and culture shift, not just in DFCS, but throughout the whole county organization and system. And Santa Clara County has been known historically to lead on this front. It's not just Santa Clara County, it's every single systems engagement in our state, in our country, that needs to be rebuilt from the ground up. We need to double down on the need for us to be better partners in ensuring our safety net services are delivered with dignity, and will leave families better off. When we engage with families, they shouldn't return as clients if we do our jobs right. We've made strides over the years. Our Latino health assessment, our community-based programming like NSU, our school and community-based probation units, our violence prevention that addresses community cohesion. This is just the beginning, and we shouldn't rest on our laurels. And we have to understand that there are systemic, structural issues and challenges here. Our society, the way it's structured, continues to abuse poor families over and over again, making them pay for generations. We can't begin to talk about systems change, culture change, until we acknowledge that violence perpetrated that has left us with what we see today. We have to make better decisions around the safety of children and families in our care who come to us for help. We have to become that organization of excellence where families know if they engage with us, they'll be given assistance, support, that they know we are in a relationship with them. This is going to be a tough road ahead for us, but we have to face these challenges head on. And we have to answer for ourselves where we perpetuate these systems of harm for our families. I share the rage, the hurt, the devastation that has been communicated to our county organization and the public and to each other in community over the past several days. I am sorry to our public that at this time, our conversations will be limited because of the pending investigations that must remain untainted, again, for us to be able to attain the level of accountability that is absolutely necessary to begin to right the wrongs. That will be frustrating many times for our advocates, our partners, for the families that are looking to us and seeking answers. But we have to maintain fidelity to this process that's happening now. In the name of transparency, moving forward, that is absolutely necessary for us to be able to approach this with the integrity that we have to. I want to ask when CDS's and when can we expect to receive CDS's independent investigation on this matter?
Thank you, Supervisor. I can let you know that as of my meeting just on Tuesday of this week, they indicated they needed the next couple weeks to complete it, and I will publicly state our full commitment to make sure that we share that information that we are allowed to share as soon as we have it back with this committee.
Help me understand the steps, because I know that there's layers of sharing and layers of communication. There's phases and steps for this. Once the independent investigation is complete, who receives it immediately? Like, what is the first point of contact at the county? Who gets to read it right away, and how does that begin to, what is the process to begin sharing that?
Typically, it comes to the Director of Department of Family and Children Services is the first line where that report typically lands. That report will be contained information that will have confidential information about the case that won't be able to be released, but the recommendations that would fold into next steps for the corrective action plan will be able to be released. We can definitely have conversations with CDSS to make sure it's clear what can be released, what can't, and partner with counsel. I'll lean on James for his conversations with CDSS as well.
Yeah, I am looking to clarity around the process of making these investigations, making the investigation public, whether it's in redacted form, the levels of review that's required before it can be shared, and at what point can it be shared publicly with members of our community. Go ahead, James.
So I've spoken directly with CDSS. I've urged them to make their findings and report as public as possible. That is helpful, obviously, for the public. It's helpful for our ability to talk about what has happened, but it's also helpful for us, meaning the board and county administration and others who also cannot otherwise access 827 protected child welfare information. I also just wanted to share with you, Supervisor, that I have asked CDSS to make themselves available at board meetings, and they've indicated a willingness to do so on a periodic basis, where we would then have an opportunity, and each of you would have an opportunity to directly talk with CDSS, including some of these questions. Some of the questions that you're asking, Supervisor, are really best answered by CDSS, since it will be their work product and their report, and governed by their rules around that. So we will seek clarity from them on timeline. I know that they started the review this week. I understand from them and from our staff that the records involved are voluminous, and we will seek to try to get a commitment from them on specific timeline. But some of these questions are really questions that are best directly answered by CDSS.
We've been working with CDSS on the corrective action plan for nearly 18 months, and emergency placements was not an area of focus. How did this area of improvement get missed?
So my best response back to that is when CDSS did review of all of our records, they identified those areas that they felt needed for areas of improvement, and that's what folded into this current corrective action plan, which was prompted, as this board knows, both from the death of baby Phoenix, as well as, at the time, multiple statements by staff and external sources that steered CDSS towards areas they wanted them to focus in on. They did not identify it as an area of worry or concern at that time. I can publicly state that I am concerned right now. It is an area that needs to focus in on, and CDSS has indicated, as James has lifted up, they will look at it both for this case, but a deeper dive into all of our placements in Santa Clara County, both for emergency placements and then the resource family approval process, which is our ongoing placement process.
Yeah, and I know you spoke to this earlier briefly, but help me understand, how does this affect our cap now? And I would hope that it does impact and affect our cap now.
Thanks for that question. To clarify further, so it affects our cap now. I can say with certainty our cap will extend longer. We will take inventory of where we are right now, those things that we've accomplished in the last 18 months, those things that still need to have further review. CDSS had planned to do a case review and take a look at where we were at with regards to those things. And then in addition to, after this case review, after their file review on placement, I anticipate we'll have additional items added to that corrective action plan. The timeline, the specifics, I don't have those answers right now because we have to allow some of that additional investigation by CDSS to help inform those next steps.
So the original schedule for the cap was we were looking towards completion
in June.
In
So I can
June.
say with certainty it will not end in June. Those additional details of how long, what it will entail, that's information I'll need to bring back after we have more information in the investigation.
And Wendy, we've heard during public comment today, and we certainly have heard in my office through our constituent communications, I've shared this with you, the sentiment and the desire for our families and community advocates to be able to be partners to the county organization for systems improvement and for culture change and how we interact and engage with our families of need. How are we beginning to engage, incorporate, or continuing that type of work that's been started?
So this committee knows we've had both our activities in our community roundtable and we've had our activities within the community social worker pilot, and I'm hearing loud and clear that is not enough. So absolutely committed to that we have to take a look at where else do we need to lean into. As indicated today and in other forums in the last couple weeks, we need to lean into our community leaders, and as you just so articulately illustrated to us, we have to come together around this. This is not just a child welfare is to tackle on their own. We have to come together, and I actively hear the need for leaders that want to be involved, and so we'll look at how we can fold them in. I'll probably initially lean into that community roundtable that Supervisor Arenas had encouraged and set up as a platform for us to expand to those leaders that are able and willing to participate, and we'll hear from them if we need to do more.
And I know that we all know what I'm hearing today. One of the themes is that these investigations take time to be done thoroughly, to be done well, and to be done in a way that will actually help us get to a level of accountability and clarity that we seek. In the meantime, what has DFCS done? What steps or short-term actions have we done in response to this tragedy to ensure that our emergency placements right now are righteous?
So thank you for that question. And in the midst of this, we did realize early on that there are some urgent actions that we need to take and to shore things up, and we have taken those actions. So I've been in active communication with my staff, because not only do we need to get to the bottom of what's occurred and how this fatality occurred, but at the same time, I need to support a dedicated workforce to make sure they're continuing to show up for every single child, every single family, and do the work that they've been asked to do. And what do we need to shore up right now to make sure that occurs? So I have sent out important reminders to the workforce of some critical policies we already had in place that seemed to fall short, so that we could shore up that with the workforce. That included our emergency approval process. That process is in place, effective immediately. We are having all of those emergency relative approvals done by dedicated staff, that's their primary responsibility. Prior to today, there was the ability for a case-carrying social worker to be able to do those protocols and policies. That's no longer in effect as of today. Those will be done by dedicated staff. In addition to that, it will require that our senior level managers sign off on that, and any child welfare history that's extensive and any criminal history will require an executive review and executive sign-off effective today. In addition to that, we have sent out some reminders around policy for the communication that occurs between social workers. As was illustrated by one of our speakers, sometimes there can be more than one social workers, so we've reiterated our policies around making sure there's that communication between social workers.
The unit or the social workers, the staff connected to this case who are on leave right now. And Michaela and James, jump in if you feel that this is a question that's out of bounds because of the current pending legal investigations. But has anything been done to review their other placements, their other cases, to ensure that that have we looked at it? Are we doing a full review, second look at those cases?
Yeah, that's fine for Wendy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for asking. So yes, a couple different things. Those that were actively involved in this situation, their caseloads, we are doing a deeper dive to make sure there are no safety concerns, what it looks like for each of their caseloads. In addition to that, we are going through all of our emergency approval placements that have now moved over into the resource family approval process for all of those kids that are placed with relatives, and we are looking at all of those cases to make sure we didn't miss anything. Everything is as it should be. We've followed all regulations, and we're doing everything that's been asked of us.
So we're doing a second review of all of the cases and the care of the social workers, the staff connected to this case.
Correct.
And on top of that, we are reviewing every single family placement right now.
Correct.
I have no additional questions at this time, and we'll be sure at this time. I'm sure through the course of this conversation, through the course of this investigation, there'll be more. Thank you.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Actually, I'll pick up from where you left off because I do have a question about who is actually doing that second review of all of those cases that are connected to the people who are on leave?
Thank you for that question, Supervisor Reyes. So I have dedicated staff that are our quality control staff that would normally be doing the approved safety review tools that we designed in partnership with CDSS to look at our assessments for safety, for risk, for engagement. They are using those tools to evaluate those caseloads. So that's their primary responsibility. They have now pivoted to do it for those cases with those workers.
But it's still us evaluating us.
It is.
I find that problematic. I want to get a report back on what the results are from those cases, from those case reviews. I want to know what those numbers are, what rendered from that case review. And I'd love to see it at the next CAP report to the board. I'll be making a motion shortly, but I'll start with that piece. We have on May 19th, we have a child welfare quarterly report. So I'd like to see if it's done by then. I'd love to see that included in this report. I'd also like to just thank you, co-chair, for your level of questions and considerations for our system of care, and for sharing. I think it's always very difficult. We are all human beings, and we come with a history of family and friends and experiences, and our interests sometimes. And I'll speak for myself, not for you, but I certainly, my own experiences shape me in a way that lead me into the places where I serve. It's no coincidence I serve in public service. It's no coincidence that my passion area is children and families. And certainly the prevention of child abuse is something that is absolutely a passion area for me for so many different reasons. And it really weighs heavy in a way I can't explain. We all should be infuriated and angry and upset that our system produced this result. And that we're one less child in this world because of us. And because we didn't look at our systems. We didn't look at the emergency placement process. How can that be if what we're set to do is for the well-being of our children? I personally feel that I've disappointed our community in a way that I can't even express. I think you're seeing me cry because I can't put that into words. And all of those children in that family, as far as I'm concerned, were not supported in a way that they deserved, that allowed them to thrive, that we didn't recognize them, that we left them where they were being hurt and abused. And then it produced a young person that hurt somebody else and that ended a life. And I'm not sure of all the details. I'm going to say allegedly, because I don't think that
murder has been declared, but there is a lot of heinous crimes against that child. And you have to assume that most 17-year-olds don't do this because they're born sociopaths, but because their environment shaped them. And so if your environment shapes you, I'm wondering what is shaping our environment and our culture in DFCS, that we're producing deaths every other year. And if we include the child and death report, we have additional deaths on our conscience. And I don't want to hear from anybody that you're sorry about this loss if you're not going to move the stars, the moon, everything to make sure that this system is different this time. And I expect you to reflect on your own leadership, just as I'm reflecting on mine. Where did we go wrong? And to your question, Supervisor, we didn't look at emergency placement because the death of baby Phoenix didn't have that. It wasn't part of that case history. It was an emergency placement. It was a mishap between the hospital and the social worker and not following that child well enough with that parent. You know, I'm harsh with myself, but I'm also going to be harsh with all of you. Because this is the leadership. And I am not proud of what we've produced so far. We keep catching different areas where children are dying. And the child death report, even though it's not on agenda, we'll see it on Tuesday, but that has also produced reports that are connected, or deaths that are connected to neglect. I am also going to expect you to give me a reflection about, thank you. I don't have a sleeve. Thank you. I'm going to take two. The last time we had this conversation, I was so angry. And this time I'm just really, I'm angry, but I'm really disappointed. And I want to make sure that our leadership reflects the kinds of leaders that are setting up an environment for transformative change in that department. And I don't know if we have that leadership, because we keep producing this. And I ask you to think about the last child that you had, if you're a parent, or maybe your favorite, but you're never supposed to admit that you have a favorite. And think about that baby when that child was 2, and they were learning how to speak, and they were beyond just walking, they were running, and they were beginning to put phrases together that just make you laugh. And they sit on your lap and you read a book, and they find you every time you come home. You're the best thing that happened to them and they're endlessly happy to see you. We won't have that for baby Phoenix, for baby Jackson, for Jordan Walker. And I want you to treat everything that we do from here on as if that child was a child that we lost almost 2 weeks ago. And that there is a fire underneath you that compels you to do something different because it is your child. I'm looking for system changes, but I'm also looking for practices. And there's something here in our plan that we didn't capture that. We were focused on policies because somehow, somewhere, the policies switched and the decisions were being made in terms of whether a child was removed or not removed by an attorney and not a clinical decision. And we corrected that. But that we didn't check back in to see, did that policy actually fulfill the practice? Is the policy being followed, and what practice and culture did that create? And I think this is what is missing from these work plans, that, this is a 129-page work plan. But there's no opportunity for us to have a quality control of our own work. So I have asked you, James, to bring in a consultant. And I asked previously to bring in a consultant for the board so that we understand in a way that maybe others already do because they're in the child welfare system and understand the laws. But I need for us, and this is part of the larger conversation. Actually, the board, I think, already approved this, if I'm correct, and somebody catch me if I'm not. But I believe I already asked for a consultant for the board during the previous process and conversation when we were talking about baby Phoenix. If it's not on a motion and it's not on the board, I'm going to more than happy to do this on Tuesday. But I need a consultant for the board so that they look at this and they figure out, what are we actually producing? At the end of this, are we producing cultural shifts? Are we creating system changes? Are we creating actual practices that contribute to the health and well-being of children? I don't know that. We're checking off boxes is what we're doing. And we've been checking off boxes because we thought we had a path. And I think we need to review, just in the same spirit you were talking about, Supervisor, that we need to look at the social workers' case files. We need to look at our own case files. This is our case file. This CAP is ours. And it wasn't enough. And so I'd love to see what that consultant can do for us. Is that something that's possible to do? I know that you'll have an independent, and I asked you for an extent for us to explore with the state to have their oversight. But I'm asking for an independent, even independent from the state.
Supervisor, I wholeheartedly agree with you. We have focused in the last couple of years extensively on policies, processes, and training. And those issues were undoubtedly necessary, but not sufficient. And in addition to having the right policies and processes and training, we also have to have the right culture, and you have to have the right systems in place to have continuous and ongoing reflection, continuous and ongoing review. And that's especially true when you're talking about systems that involve so much decision-making that is so challenging and dynamic and reflective, sometimes of extraordinarily complex situations involving families with extraordinary needs. And there has to be that continuous feedback and continuous and ongoing engagement. There's a few things related to that that I believe are important to do here. One is undoubtedly the role of CDSS, and we've talked a lot about that, and that's in part because under our structure in California, CDSS has unique authority, but also access to information, as well as responsibilities that are across the 58 child welfare systems in California. And so, in addition to the specific review related to Jackson, and I believe my understanding is they're looking at 50 additional case files. I see Wendy nodding. And in addition to the extension of the cap, we've also asked them to do their own ongoing reviews on site. That'll be part of the CDSS process, so that we're not just in a reactive posture, but a proactive one in assessing what they see based on their expertise, based on compliance with their regulations. But I don't believe that's sufficient either. And so we are working on recommendations to bring to the board for consideration related to an ongoing auditing, oversight, and review function that would be separate from DFCS. The creation of that is complex because of state law. It's something I've already raised with CDSS to understand what we can do and what models might exist elsewhere in the state. My understanding from those initial conversations with the state is that they're limited, but we are going to push those boundaries and figure out the right ways to set those up. And I'm continuing to do research around that to bring forward the best recommendations to the board. And that's something that's really important, obviously, for the board and for the public, and it's really important for county administration, that we know we have that independent, ongoing review and assessment so that we're proactively identifying areas, not reactively, like we just discussed in the context of emergency placement and the existing corrective action plan. And in addition to that, that we have the appropriate structures in place to provide adequate leadership, supervision, and support to staff, knowing that this is very difficult work and that we have to be staffed and support staff appropriately in being able to do their best work in this area. So it's not just about oversight and review, but also about the support for that work to be done well. We are also looking at bringing other external experts in, including what you referenced, Supervisor, to help give us those policy level recommendations and structural recommendations. I've asked the state for their suggestions in that regard too, but we're not just asking the state. Earlier today, for example, I had a conversation with former director of Los Angeles County's agency. We're looking at what some best practices might be from some other large agencies as well. And we will be bringing those forward to the board as swiftly as possible, because I think those types of issues, those types of structures are not specific to the review of this particular fatality, right? This particular tragedy or any other specific one. It's really about exactly what you're talking about, Supervisor, which is systemically, how do we know with confidence that it wouldn't be the case 2 years from now that some other aspect of this work turns out to have an issue, or some other element of work that's being done arises as an issue. And so the question is, how do we, within the confines of the state laws, create that ongoing process to try to identify those things proactively? So that exactly is top of my mind in thinking about what things we need to have in place. And you have my commitment that we will be bringing forward those recommendations for the board's consideration as swiftly as possible, but in a way that's complete too. We want to make sure we actually have had some of those conversations so that it's fleshed out.
I appreciate that, and thank you for, I also I had previously asked you for an independent consultant that could come in and do case review files, but what you're just explained is a lot more comprehensive than just case review files. This is about really taking a look at systems, practices, policies, and like you said, structurally, what is it that we are, what is our organization going to produce with those elements that we have in place, and maybe what kind of changes do we need to make? My question is, why are you making those recommendations, and why isn't the leadership under DFCS making those recommendations? Why isn't the chief operating officer making those recommendations? Why is it requiring another death for those recommendations to come from the county executive's office and not the department that actually is responsible for it?
I should clarify that these recommendations, when I say we, I'm referring to not just me, but to the county exec's office as a whole, but also to leadership within the social services agency and the department, who are also having these conversations, also gathering information to bring forward their ideas that will then ultimately be recommendations from me to the board. So it's not just me by myself. I should be very clear about that, although I am certainly directly involved. And I will say that one element of this that I think has been different is, we do have 100 and, I think you mentioned the exact number of pages, 120, 150 page corrective action plan. And I think we have been operating for the last 18 months under the expectation that that corrective action plan, which was put in place by CDSS, which was very extensive and involved a comprehensive policy review and comprehensive training review, was really addressing the most significant concerns. We now know that there's a lot more. And so that has prompted this much further examination.
I appreciate you saying that, but I really doubt that. Listen, I'm doubting the leadership that is currently in place. I'm not making any bones about it. I'm very open. I shoot from the hip. I told you the last time. This continues to happen. I don't know, you tell me, or you all tell me how many children could die under your leadership and you still have a job. If they're brown, maybe 5, like what is it? If they're white, none? What is it? What's the quota? You all seem to think that you're going to give your sorrow to the families and
the relatives in the community, but where is your responsibility and your accountability? These are lives. These are children's lives. Your work so far has kept children in place. This is in place of where children are continue to being abused. How desolate, how terrible do you think it is for a child to grow up thinking that the system and the world doesn't care about them? That they deserve to be with their family? Who's mistreating them? So the whole generation of children that you all found not substantiated, all of those children that we kept in the system, chronically abused, will come back to us in our probation department, and then into our jail, and then into our prison system. And I don't hear the level of accountability from leadership at this point to say, this is how we are righting this wrong. You all know that I don't mince words. If you think that you can continue to have a job, irregardless of the deaths that fall at your feet, then maybe the question is whether this is the right county for you to serve. I'm going to end this conversation by making a motion. Because at this point, I feel like it's fruitless. I'm going to make a motion to cross-reference this report to the budget workshop. I'd like the board to be aware of the CDSS's intention to extend the cap. Of course, I think you've already done that by providing a memo, James. But the fact that there's additional support services that may be needed to address new recommendations that emerge, to provide the additional services and support services, wraparound services that are expensive, that emerge from this investigation, and clear budgetary information regarding the gaps between what we currently fund and what we would need to fund to have our system work for our kids. I'd also like to have the community advisory roundtable fall under, be transitioned into the county executive's office so that it can remain independent and stakeholders don't feel compelled to behave or give feedback or be limited in their participation simply because it's under the Department of Family and Children Services. I'm also going to ask to cross-reference this report for you to add your additional report that you released today to the Board of Supervisors meeting on May 19th, where we're already expected to hear the Child Welfare Quarterly Reforms Report for the purpose of additional discussions regarding the child welfare reform implementations, work plan shifts that will be necessary. And that is my motion, unless there's something additional that you wanted to add.
Second. Oh, Supervisor, can I chime in really quickly?
Sure, chime in, Michaela.
For cross-referencing the report, that completely works for this committee. For an action of moving the roundtable, I think that might need to go back to the full board since that was originally approved at the full board.
Okay, I'll go ahead and make a motion at that time, at May 19th, but just know that that is my request.
Okay.
James, and if you want to bring that to the board instead of having me do a referral.
I think we can easily incorporate that into what's coming on May 19th.
Perfect. So I'll remove that from the motion, and I think that's, oh, and then, of course, accept the report.
Yeah, second.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, no.
And before we go to vote, I do have another line of questioning that I wanted
perfect,
to bring.
please. Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't check in.
No, it's I left off in the first round. Switching gears a little bit here, but still related to our efforts to improve our systems and correct our systems. A few hours ago, we received notice that the Dependency Advocacy Center is dissolving as an organization. They have a contract through the Judicial Council to provide representation in dependency court, where our child welfare cases are heard through to the end of August, August 31st. I realize that their contract is with the Judicial Council, not with the county. What does this mean to our system? What does this mean? What happens when dependency representation for the families are not present, available, or enough?
Supervisor, if I could respond to this. Obviously, it's devastating news, and DAC has been a really important partner. There are models that most counties follow using a panel system, which isn't to say that this isn't a hard moment or that it's not going to be a big transition, but there is a model, and because DAC is giving a runway, I think there will be time for those conversations to come back from the court partners and the Judicial Council.
Yeah, I'll just say this, that without knowing more, without having more information, I am really worried about us adopting a panel model, which other counties have done. Those are private attorneys that I'm not speaking to any specific county or any specific attorney. I don't have that direct experience, but going from an organizational contractor that also provides a level of wraparound care and services that have developed these programs in partnership with community, with advocates, with county. That's not going to exist on a panel of private attorneys taking these cases on contract, who may also be practicing other areas of law, and this becomes part of their portfolio.
Supervisor, what I might suggest is, we just saw the notice, I think it was at like 1:30 today. So we need to find out some more information, but we also need to understand what the court is thinking, since this is a court, Judicial Council run contract and run process. But we will find out what we can and make sure that information is shared with the full board based on what we find out. But we also just have received this news at the same time, and so I don't think we have additional information right now, but obviously this is a very significant concern.
I'm going to also ask, well then, I'm going to ask for a baseline of understanding. I think dependency representation, dependency court is a very specific, very niche area of law and practice that is in a very complex structure with child welfare and laws and just the welfare institutions code. And so on and so forth. So I believe that this board, this committee, and the members of the board need to understand, I need to understand what happens when one party to the case, a child welfare case, doesn't have representation. Does the hearing even proceed? What goes forward? What are the harms? What will occur systemically to our docket, our caseloads, the children, our care, if their cases are not being heard? So I know that I hear you that this dropped on us just at 1:30 today, but that's going to be information that I would like to have included when updates come to the board.
Yeah, absolutely. We will put that together quickly.
Thank you.
Perfect. Go ahead.
Vice Chairperson Young?
Yes.
Chairperson Arenas?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Perfect. We are going to go to our last item, and our last item is, I believe it's a verbal report. This is item 6. Receiving a report from the Office of County Executive relating to the fiscal year 2026-2027 budget proposals from
Supervisor,
departments.
I think you have item 5.
Oh, item 5, sorry. Yes, thank you.
Yes, I knew it was a verbal report, but I was reading the wrong one. Okay, receive a bi-monthly verbal report from the Office of Children and Families. We're going to receive a report regarding the Child and Youth Services Master Plan that is a joint venture with the City of San Jose and our Department of DFCS.
Good afternoon, Chair Arenas and Vice Chair Young. Heidi Emberling, the Director of the Office of Children and Families Policy. This report is the second update on progress for the city-county demonstration site pilots requested during the joint meeting in December between the CSFC and the City of San Jose Neighborhood Services and Education Committee. Since the initial update in February, we've worked to monitor the data elements in the quarterly updates submitted by the funded grantees who are piloting the Families First Community Pathway demonstration sites. The pilot sites are designed to focus on upstream prevention-focused efforts that support families through these trusted community-based agencies that build ongoing supportive relationships with families, some of whom may be at risk for future system involvement. The agencies report that families may enter the resource centers seeking support for an immediate basic needs such as food, housing, childcare, healthcare services, immigration supports, or financial assistance. Staff then work to connect those families with community-based city or county services that provide the relief and support they need. Building trusting relationships with families over multiple visits allows staff to assess for additional and ongoing needs, aim to strengthen and stabilize the family unit, including access to parenting guidance, child development knowledge, and increasing safe, nurturing home environments in which children can thrive. Initial data has revealed a total of 209 families referred for additional services and supports, with 185 of those accepting referrals to services in the community. This includes 33 from the two Catholic charity sites, Seven Trees and Santee, and 152 from the Si Se Puede collective sites provided by Somos and Grail Family Services at Mayfair and Poco Way. As this is the first year of implementation, the county continues to work closely with our funding partner, the City of San Jose, and with the demonstration site implementation agencies to better understand the most effective ways to support families and connect them to resources. A full report on the Families First Community Pathway demonstration sites will be coming back to the board in August. At that time, we'll share data from the full fiscal year, 2025-2026, including client outcomes and knowledge gained. This concludes my verbal update.
Thank you. We're going to look to Camille to see if there's any public comment.
We have no requests to speak.
Great. Coach?
Thank you. Thank you, Heidi, for that presentation and for your continued work on this. Where are we now in developing shared data agreements between the city and the county?
We have the data agreements through our contract with the agencies, and the City of San Jose is actually also partnering with the Sobrato organization to create a larger evaluation for their No Wrong Door effort, which includes the demonstration sites, but goes beyond that to other areas of their Children and Youth Services Master Plan. So we will be looking at those evaluations closely, but we will also be reporting on the specific evaluative outcomes that we developed at the beginning of the contract period.
Okay, I'm going to narrow my question further so that I can, so this, what I would like to see to the extent possible and really a response from your office on this, maybe not necessarily today, but as this work continues, is that where can we, or is it possible to align on core intake questions and key metrics where it is appropriate? And what would it take to explore a unified intake form? And Heidi, related to that, is that how often do our main stakeholders, our funders, nonprofit partners at demonstration sites, our city partners, your office, and your colleague, the team you have here at the county, meet to align on measurement, evaluation, and learning?
We all meet monthly, and then I have a separate meeting with the city of San Jose to make sure we're in alignment on the evaluative metrics.
Right, so I want to make sure I'm hearing this correctly, that what I'm hearing is that there is concerted effort as a priority for the coordination of intake and referrals and of metrics.
Yes.
Okay, and I would like to hear more about that the next time that this report comes back.
Yeah.
I know that there is a lot of interest to support this work, and we certainly do need interest, AKA investments and support beyond our budgetary landscape right now. And part of that's going to require this coordination, this level of coordination from city and county efforts in this partnership. Who is our lead on the Children and Youth Services Master Plan at the City Council? Who's your main partner over here? Over there.
At the city side?
Yeah.
I work directly with Andrea Shelton Flores and Olympia Williams. And then I also work with Israel, who is convening all of the partners for this effort.
Well, if they may be listening or someday hear this presentation, my appreciation goes out to them. And to the extent possible, I'm going to, of course, direct questions through our own county staff. But I think until we have that full partnership or that complete alignment, there'll be times where I'm going to be asking questions of the city. So that's why I asked you for those touch points.
Of course, and I'm happy to research those and get back to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Heidi. The last question I have for today on this matter is the demonstration sites are essentially an extension of co-location of services. How can we share lessons learned from the county's other models? Do you see value in that from the Child Advocacy Center, the Hub, the VASC, in being able to support these conversations?
Yeah, of course, I think we're all stronger as a community when we have community voices from different aspects of the community and community needs at the same table. These organizations that we're working with, Catholic Charities and Somos, the Si Se Puede Collective and Grail Family Services, are very connected to other resources in the community, and I'll definitely look at exploring how those resources could also be included in this.
Yeah, it may be a matter of timing, right? Because the work is ongoing and developing, and the impetus for my question is that this work that's being done now is it's a model, it's a collaborative model, it's a pilot, whatever term you want to provide to it. What I'd love to see in the future is for this work to reach a point where it becomes part of the infrastructure of the county, part of our county landscape, embedded in how we do work, not just as a program, even though it starts off that as a very defined, discrete program, but how does this then become incorporated into our systems of care and how we approach the world? And what I see as a consistent theme throughout this is the co-location extension of services. So we do have brick and mortar examples and demonstrations of it at the county. At some point, would it make sense for us to then look at those existing hubs of co-located services and extension of services and place-based services to further embed and really make this work concrete as part of the foundation of the county?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay, absolutely. We will take that back for sure.
Yeah,
into all the considerations for this.
Yeah, thank you, Heidi.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm thinking about how we are going to. I know that you're in the process of establishing the pilot program. It's still not fully implemented. It's not 100% implemented, and we're working out a lot of kind of details and kind of the kinks of it, right? I wonder if we could, at one point, and maybe this is more for James, that we consider what we're doing with the City of San Jose on the Child and Youth Master Plan, so that falls in line with the kind of maybe support system that will connect back
to our overall plan with the child welfare system. And so it's congruent. And I know that, you know, I started it, the Child and Youth Master Plan over on the other side, and it kind of evolved a little bit by the time it got over to the county side. And I think evolution is okay. I think we always need to shift and be responsive. And so I wonder if this would be actually this pilot program, once the kind of the kinks are sorted out, we fine tune it to be more connected to and responsive to child welfare.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And, you know, the next item on the agenda, we're going to talk about budget. But, you know, the reality is, given the broader fiscal constraints that we're under, but also the city, having alignment in investments, even if they're different parts of a continuum of care, is, I think, really important. And we don't have in this moment the ability to be operating in silos, right? There has to actually be integration and connection. So I think it would behoove all of us, both the county organization but also the city, to make sure there's as much alignment as possible in those investments, and that those investments are targeted, because we can't do everything, right? And so having focus and prioritization in this instance, as I think you're suggesting, on where we need additional investments focused on families that are affected by or in our child welfare system, makes a lot of sense to me. And we can certainly broach the city for, and I'm seeing nodding heads, but for engagement in that specific effort.
Yeah, and they might also look at it in kind of in a different light, because I know there's a focus on the city side around homelessness, and it could also be part of family homeless prevention.
That's right.
Right, yeah. And that kind of integrated into that framework. I guess what I'm saying is, whatever speaks to the city, that child welfare may not be at the top of their priority, right? Because it's not one of their focuses, but homelessness is, right?
That's right. And there's intersectionality, there's overlap, so I think there's ways in which the city can provide investment that's aligned with the city lens, but that is in alignment with the county lens, because we're talking about the same most vulnerable families.
Right. You know, I'll wait for the next item, because I think this is an opportunity to think about how are systems actually speaking with one another, communicating and figuring out. You do that piece and I do this other, and yet we're leveraging our own respective resources to accomplish a shared goal, a shared objective. So I'll leave that for the next item. I don't have any questions, so we don't need a motion, because this is a verbal report. Thank you. All right. Now it is item 6. This is Office of the County Executive relating to the fiscal year 2026-27 budget proposals from departments reporting to the CSFC committee, this respective committee.
I can share a couple comments at the outset. I don't know if you want to take public comment first before I do that, or whatever order you like.
Is there something you're going to present, or?
Mostly available to answer questions. I was just going to remind folks of the process. We always sunshine the proposals that departments bring to the county executive for consideration as part of the recommended budget process. But as is true every year, and it's certainly true this year as well, not all of these proposals will be included in the recommended budget. Proposals may be modified, and there may be additional proposals in the recommended budget that did not come from the departmental recommendations. And that's certainly true this year as well. But it is an opportunity to sunshine those items that departments did bring forward, consistent with my request to departments to meet certain targets to try to look at how we balance the budget overall. But I do want to emphasize, and that's particularly true this year, that there's a variety of proposals that will be in the recommended budget that are likely to be different or additional or modified. The recommended budget will be out May 1st. We have budget workshops, as I know the two supervisors are aware, the week of May 11th. And the budget workshops are a time to go through those items in the recommended budget for the board to be able to ask for additional questions or information, as well as any additional alternatives or changes. And then I also want to just emphasize there are always revised recommendations that come in June. I can share with this committee there undoubtedly will be revised recommendations with respect to DFCS in particular that will come forward in June. That address some of the items we spoke to earlier this afternoon and that were identified in the memo that I provided the board earlier today. So I'll pause there. Don't know if there's any questions about kind of the overall or that process. And then, of course, if there's questions from the committee regarding specific departmental ideas that were brought forward.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Camille for public comment.
We have one request online.
I'll go ahead and do a minute.
1 minute, okay. So we'll just, okay. So our speaker is Parent. Parent, you'll have 1 minute to speak. Please go ahead.
Yes, obviously I'm being targeted during public comment, but regarding the budget, you know, I don't know if we've allocated enough money for screenings. I mean, like everybody knows that my kids should get a screening. There's never been an investigation of any kind. Nothing has been done. I'm not even getting responses. Maybe we don't have enough money in the budget for screenings. Maybe it's a lot of money. I don't know. It's not differentiated in the budget how much a screening costs. Is it $1 million? Is it $100,000? Maybe I could sort of understand why my kids aren't getting a screening if it's that expensive. But you know, regardless of expense, I mean, every kid deserves a screening when they report child abuse, so we shouldn't be stingy about providing screenings. Also, a consultant would be a good idea if we could budget something for a consultant. As Supervisor Arenas previously said, I think that would be a great idea as well. Thank you so much for your time.
That concludes public comment.
Thank you. Co-chair? Any? Okay. One of my questions is, how are we, because we don't have any of the recommendations so far from CDSS regarding if there's going to be additional staffing that's necessary, things that I think are going to be crucial. Obviously, we never have enough folks to do what we need to do, but how are we going to deal with that? You know, just feel like because it's the cart before the horse thing.
Yeah, no, that's great questions. First of all, I wholeheartedly agree. We never have enough to do what we need to do. And then you layer on top of that the extraordinary fiscal crisis we're in, and that makes this all the harder. You know, this is going to be a very challenging budget, and it's a hard one for me to bring in front of the board for consideration. But specifically regarding, you know, whatever recommendation CDSS has, as well as the other things we've been talking about, the other items that we believe as an organization need to be put in place. That's exactly what I was alluding to in terms of revised recommendations. I can't tell you now how those would be funded or what that would look like. That's work that we will do in the month of May. But even after that point, the budget's a living document. And so every single board agenda, we make adjustments and modifications. Obviously, it's easier to do in the budget process itself, but we will need to make adjustments based on things that we learn throughout the course of the year, and that will certainly be true in this area as well, because the reality is there will undoubtedly be information we learn post-approval even of the budget this year that may necessitate additional supports or resources specifically related to our child welfare system, and we will need to pivot investments to address those needs. But it is very hard right now because we have to scramble to try to identify offsets, and we will bring our best ideas forward to the board to do so, but we do have to make pivots all the time in order to fund critical things.
Thank you. No, we're definitely pivoting. I don't know how. I know that there's already some reductions that are going to be at DFCS, DOS, and DEBS are going to be impacted. And I know that folks have been careful about, or at least I'm hoping that the conversations are inclusive of the board's priorities. But I know that primarily you're looking at non-mandated and mandated.
Yes. So the lenses through which we are looking at these difficult decisions are mandated, non-mandated, because we perform a number of state mandated functions.
Yeah.
The funding streams that are involved, and when we're talking about the Social Services Agency in particular, we have blended funding streams that are mixed federal, state, and local funding that are intertwined together. And so making sure we're attentive to that, because if we're needing to balance, for example, based on general fund, we try to avoid having to cut 2, 3, 4, 5-fold in order to achieve a general fund savings and lose federal and state reimbursements. So that's another piece. The board's priorities are paramount. And so, this is a tough thing because most of what we do as an organization and most of how we spend our money as an organization is on safety net services for the most vulnerable in our community, whether that's in the Social Services Agency, which is what's relevant for this particular conversation, or our health and hospital system, behavioral health, et cetera. That is where and how the county spends its money. And so looking as carefully as we can at mitigation of impact. But make no mistake, when we're talking about magnitude of cuts that we are as a county organization, there are impacts on the community and on the services that we can provide. And we would be dishonest to suggest otherwise. What we can say is we bring forward the best recommendations we can to try to minimize those and to try to continue to put as much investment as we can where we have discretion on those areas of highest priority and highest need. So that's the broader framework. We apply that to the budget as a whole. It's a complex set of things because there's interrelationships as well between programs. And I would just add that facet. The department that is most heavily impacted in the forthcoming budget is behavioral health. And as the board knows, we had a study session focused on behavioral health, and I'll get to why that's relevant here in a second. But we had a study session focused on behavioral health at the board on February 10th. And as the board's aware, there's a number of state-directed changes that really upend the delivery of service in that system and the funding streams and how those funding streams are organized. Well, we have to be thoughtful about, to the extent that we can, and we don't, again, have full discretion over some of these funding streams, how are those behavioral health services then relied upon by, for example, youth in our probation system or in our child dependency system? And what are those interrelationships? How can we shift funding for different things? Those are the kinds of questions we have to try to think through as best as we can. We're not perfect, but to try to think through as best as we can in putting together a holistic recommended budget. But it's one of the things that I'm most concerned about, to be fully transparent, most concerned about in the upcoming budget is the whole series of impacts and changes in behavioral health, most of which are state-directed, not even federal. We have a federal piece, but most of which are state-directed coming largely out of the governor's Proposition 1 from November of 2024. And the timing is unfortunate because the timing of those changes is now coming right on top of federal funding losses. And so they're stacking on top of each other. But those are that's the kind of lens we try to think through. And when I present the recommended budget to the board at the first day of workshop, I'll try to explain better how we've tried to fit those puzzle pieces together. But nobody's going to be happy about where we are with the budget. I'm not. And I don't think any supervisor will be either. We're just trying to make the best strategic choices with what we have.
I appreciate that. I think, there's a couple of places where I think, hate to bring the room down again, but deaths are definitely one of the red flags that tell us, either we need to do more, we are not, it's not the right service for that population, or we're not providing maybe in the way that is responsive. And I say this because I think about the death of the nurse that we just lost to domestic violence. That one it was in my district, and when I went to a neighborhood association meeting, there was folks who were really just astounded that had happened, down the block from them, and how can this happen, and what is the county doing, and what are the investments, and those are the kinds of services that are not mandated, right, but that save lives, that can help prevent from that cycle of violence that eventually potentially brings us into that family household, right? The CPS or DFCS's involvement. I want to make sure that even though those are not, and then of course we had another, in my district last year we had another loss of life because of domestic violence, and so it just those are the areas that I hope that you're also continuing to consider. You talked about probation, DFCS. What was the third department that you were worried about? You said you were
behavioral health.
Oh, of
Yeah.
course. No. But I thought behavioral health integrated into
Yes.
those
Yes.
into those other departments. I thought there was a third department, but I guess not. Yes, I worry about that too, because of course those are very vulnerable places, right? I worry about how are we going to provide services for schooling services, right? How are we, if we understand also the suicides that are happening from our death and child report that we'll hear on Tuesday, and we know that I think for the most part, if it's a suicide, it has behavioral health issue, right? I mean, we can't say it was, well, maybe sometimes it is an accident, but if you're leading up to that, whether they accessed a behavioral health service or not, it is a behavioral health issue. And so in the same way that we're prompted to make changes or to do better by our children when we have loss of life in DFCS systems, I think that we also need to take a look at loss of life in our child and youth death report that are related to suicides, because that tells us we didn't get it right somehow, right? I mean, of course, we can't catch everyone, but could there have been a possibility of our involvement? Could we have, if we had more?
Yeah, there was conversation around suicide prevention piece, specifically in the Health and Hospital Committee the other day. It's actually one of the areas where the state is making some changes under Prop 1, which is, and we'll talk, I'm sure, about this at the budget workshops, but Prop 1 actually pulls Mental Health Services Act funding away from counties and redirects it to the California Department of Public Health for suicide prevention. So the funding's being yanked away from the counties, and CDPH is, in essence, supposed to use that funding to do statewide related work in that vein. That's a real challenge for us because, we currently use that funding for suicide prevention activities within the Behavioral Health Services Department. So one of the things that we are advocating for is for CDPH to actually pass that funding back to us. And, it could be on an opt-in basis. If not every county wants to do that, that could be, a county-by-county decision. But our firm belief is that that funding, at least for Santa Clara County, should be passed back to us so that we can continue to fund directly that work with our staff here locally and not just be reliant on the state level campaigns that they run and operate there. But this is an example of exactly what you're talking about, Supervisor, which is what's happening with some of these funding streams and what are some of the broader impacts that I don't think people always even understand when the legislature or the governor are even proposing some of these things, or where maybe it is, I don't know, but maybe it's something that makes sense for the 30 smaller counties in the state to have a more efficient state-run program in that vein. Maybe, I don't know. But it's certainly not something we believe makes sense with respect to Santa Clara County and our community here. And I suspect the larger urban counties would completely agree with us. So anyway, we're doing a specific, it's not exactly legislative advocacy because it's really within the decision-making of CDPH as an agency, but some specific advocacy around that, and we'd be happy to share that with your office as well so that you can be a part of that effort. But just more broadly, I would say we are continuing, and you will continue to see recommendations to make investments in all of the areas that you mentioned. Undoubtedly, you will find them insufficient. I do too, because as we've noted, the need is so much greater. So you're not going to ever hear me say that this is, too much funding for these things. But you will see recommendations coming forward to continue investments in these areas, and we've worked very hard on lots of approaches. Actually, I should have mentioned this much earlier on when we talked about how we think through budget proposals. As you know, I go to revenue first. I think I have a reputation for that and in pushing on that for many, many years in a variety of ways. And I think we continue to do so strategically. We are doing so again, and there will be a number of proposals related to that because that's how we try to preserve as many of these services as possible. And there's a direct relationship between that and what we can invest in these areas of greatest need. And we continue to do that, and you will continue to see recommendations related to that too. So that's always the first thing that we try, first set of levers we try to pull before we're bringing forward recommendations for cuts.
At this point, if that, well, when that money goes, I'm going to guess it is going to go to public health, the statewide public health. I guess what has our relationship been with the statewide public health in terms of how local can they really be to the culture and the needs of the counties?
Well, I would say this. We had a lot of experience with CDPH during the pandemic because they had, the statewide response role for the pandemic. We know a lot of folks in leadership at CDPH. I think they're really good folks. But here's the reality. which is if you're sitting in Sacramento and you have responsibility across the 58 counties, it is very hard to effectively run a uniform program in a way that's responsive to the differing needs of different communities. And that's especially a concern for us because the diversity of this community is different than many parts of the state. And our county has the highest percentage of foreign-born residents, has among the most languages spoken, and we have capacity in-house to, for example, deliver language translation in an informed and intelligent and sophisticated way that the state doesn't. And that isn't the same need in all other parts of California. And I just give that as one concrete example among others. And so I do believe that while certain things do make sense to be run at a state level, in a state as diverse and large and complex as California, other things need to be thought of either regionally or locally. That's why counties are subdivisions of the state. I think that in fairness to the state, maybe there's a component of generalized, widespread community awareness, TV, advertising that maybe makes sense more cost effectively statewide when you think of media markets. I could see that logically. But when it comes to the programming and service delivery and actual on the ground interaction, and especially when it comes to how are you engaging hard to reach communities, that cannot be effectively done at the state level, and especially not in a county of the complexity and with the complexity of the diverse needs of Santa Clara County. So that's exactly the argument we are making, which is they should at least let counties opt in to continue to directly receive that funding, so that those counties like ours, and I suspect, like I said, that the large urban counties would be similarly situated, could continue to receive that funding directly. So that's what we're asking for, and we'll see. I think I think CDPH probably is still trying to figure out what the program would look like for them anyway, right? And it's a hard time for public health generally. If you look at the nonsense at the federal level. And so, our public health leadership in the state and in counties across California, has been kept very busy dealing with a federal government that has said all sorts of contrary and contradictory and really harmful things related to vaccination and everything else. So more to come. And I'm sure we'll have some specific discussion about that particular item at the budget workshop.
Right. Well, they'll be dealing with a increase in measles instead of. Anyways, we'll move on. Those were my questions, and it looks like Co-Chair. Yeah.
I'm good. I'll make a motion to receive the report.
Perfect, and I'll second that. And.
Vice Chairperson Young?
Yes.
And Chairperson Arenas?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you. All right, we come to that end of our agenda where we have announcements, and this is for any of the department heads. This is item 8 for those of you who are following us. If there's any announcements you would all like to make. Perfect. All right. Well, then that concludes our meeting, and we're adjourned until May 28th. Thank you.